behind the scenes. Wilfred, you got your two heavyweights today. Would you please welcome Mr. Matthew James?
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Fellow Toastmasters, good morning. It's good to see everyone. Ahab and Jehoshaphat made very unlikely allies. They were almost the total opposites of one another. But they came together for one battle that gives us a glimpse of what goes on behind the scenes to help us understand that what we see in history is merely the tip of the iceberg for what's really there. And if we can understand God's sovereign control over all of these events, when tough times come and when the impossible situations would threaten to stop us, we can take comfort in this fact. We can accomplish more talking to God about man than even talking to man about God. Because while we cannot change anybody's minds, God can. God proved that as Ahab and Jehoshaphat, these two most unlikely allies, came together, and the King Ahab, who was ruling the northern tribes of Israel, said to his servants, "Don't you realize that this territory in Ramoth-Gilead belongs to us, and the Syrians currently control it, and we're not doing anything about it? Don't you think we should take it?" He asked Jehoshaphat if he would go with him to the battle. Jehoshaphat couldn't have been more willing. He said, "My people will be like your people, and my horses will be like your horses. I am like you. But before we go, shouldn't we inquire of the Lord?" So Ahab began to gather all of the people together, and he got about 400 prophets together. 400 prophets. And one by one they all said, "Go up, king, and get the victory, because God will put Ramoth-Gilead in your hands." One by one they all said the same thing. And Jehoshaphat looked at the situation and said, "Isn't there one prophet of the Lord that we could inquire of?" Ahab says, "There's one guy, but I hate him. His name is Micaiah, and he never has a good word to say about me. He always predicts doom and bad stuff." Jehoshaphat, "Oh, no, Ahab, don't take that kind of an attitude. Call him. Let's hear what he's got to say." So Ahab sent quickly for Micaiah, and the messenger who went to get Micaiah said, "Now, Micaiah, we got a unanimous verdict on this question about Ramoth-Gilead. Don't mess it up. You speak the way the other prophets speak." Micaiah says, "We'll see what the Lord has to say." While they were gone, there were so many demonstrations going on. One of the prophets made himself horns of iron, and he said, that God is going to drive them out before you. You go, king, you get them." So Micaiah stood before the king. "Micaiah, what should we do? Should we go up to Ramoth-Gilead, or should we stay at home?" Micaiah said, "King, you should go up. You should go get that land. God is going to put that land in your hands." Ahab said, "How many times do I have to tell you? Only tell me the truth according to what the Lord says to you." So Micaiah stood up straight, squared his shoulders, and lifted his head, and says to King Ahab, "I saw all of Israel scattered through the mountains, like sheep without any shepherd. And everyone was sent to his own home and to his own country." Ahab turns to Jehoshaphat. "See, didn't I tell you? He never has any good news for me. He never has any encouraging word for me. It's always bad." Micaiah spoke again, saying, "King, I'll give you a second chance. I saw the Lord sitting with his heavenly hosts, and he asked all of the hosts of heaven in the spirit world, who will entice Ahab that he may go up to Ramoth Gilead and be killed? And there was a great conference of spirits and angels and demons and one idea and another idea until finally one spirit stepped forward and said, I will entice him. And the Lord said, how will you do it? The Spirit said, I will be a lying mouth. I will be a lying spirit in the mouth of all his prophets, and they will all tell him to go up. The Lord said, you go and you deceive, you will succeed. Therefore, O king, the Lord has put a lying spirit in the mouth of all of your prophets, and you will not return in peace. Zedekiah, this other prophet that had been making the horn display while Micaiah was on his way, he went up to Micaiah and struck him on the cheek and said, how do you suppose that the Spirit of the Lord has come from me to go to you? Micaiah said, well, you'll see when you are soon hiding for your life. The king ordered that people would take Micaiah and send him to prison. Just feed him with a little bit of water and a little bit of bread until I return in peace. And Micaiah said, if you return in peace, O king, the Lord has not spoken by me. And then he turned to all of the people who were witnesses and said, mark my words. Well, Micaiah was right. Jehoshaphat and Ahab went up to take Ramoth Gilead. And despite Ahab's craftiness, despite all of his plots to hide from the Syrians, he was killed in a spectacular way. You see, Ahab had made a deal with Jehoshaphat. He said, I'll disguise myself like a warrior. You go like a king. You wear your kingly robes. Perhaps he thought that would give him some anonymity, and perhaps he thought that Jehoshaphat would think that would give him an advantage because all the fighting would be done all the skirmish would be done among the people, the lower ranks. But what they didn't know is that the Syrian king had given his troops the order, don't fight with small men, don't fight with great men, you only fight with the king. And they almost had him because they were running after Jehoshaphat, supposing that he was the king of Israel. And he cried out to them to say who he was. And when they realized that it wasn't the king of Israel, they turned away. And it just so happened that a random soldier drew a random bow and let it fly. And it caught Ahab right between the metal of his armor and his helmet, the one vulnerable place it happened to strike. Ahab was deceived because God wanted him to go and be destroyed. And what happens behind the scenes in all of the course of human events, what happens in the heavenly realms where God is on His throne, what happens among all of the spirits of this world, the prince of the power of the air in all of his efforts, along with his host, to guide the course of this world in the direction that he wants it, and the power of our God to manipulate all of that according to His flawless plan, has far more to do with the unfolding of history than what you and I decide, or what you and I resolve, or how you and I tough it out. No matter what we do, our God is in control. Never forget what's happening behind the scenes. Mr. Toastmaster.